Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some consequences for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading you the post, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Posted to Consequences by JSMK. I really need to get taglines set up. Originally posted to r/bestof, collected by Lucy Aria Rose, and their tagline is, I'm keeping the garlic. The original OP is equivalent ladder 197, posted in r/off my chest, and their own page. September 8th, 2023. My brother proposed to my fiancé, his ex, and I'm pissed. My, 28 male, brother Mark, 26 male, used to date my fiancé, Jen, 26 female, a year ago. For context, they dated back in August of 2022. They were only together for a month before he broke things off with her because he was bored of being in a relationship and never really wanted to settle down anyway. At the time they were dating, I was in a different state, so I had no idea he even had a girlfriend, and I had no idea who Jen was until I met her. Jen and I met at a bar when I moved back in October and hit it off really well. She was easily the most beautiful and intelligent woman I ever met, and we met up a few times before we made it official. Fast forward to December, and I finally bring her up to my family and propose them meeting her at Christmas. They knew I was in a relationship, but I'm not the most open about my personal life, so I kept the details about her to a minimum until I knew how serious we really were. My parents asked to see a picture, and they started passing my phone around the dinner table. Mark saw it and blew up, calling me a shit brother for dating his ex-girlfriend, and he demanded I break it off with her. I refused. When I asked Jen about it, she confirmed they dated and gave me the details about their breakup. It took a few weeks, but eventually Mark stopped bringing up me dating his ex, and I thought he was over it. On Jen's birthday this year, I took her out to a fancy dinner with both of our families and her closest friends, and I asked her to marry me. Mark flipped once again and blew up about me proposing to her, which I and my sisters immediately shut down. The incident happened this past weekend. Mark had been pretty quiet about the whole thing for the last 2 months. I didn't see him much and figured he went low contact with me, which I had no problem with. Then, he invited me and Jen for family dinner at his apartment with my parents and sisters. I thought it was weird, but my parents and sisters were also going, so we agreed to go. The dinner was nice, nothing too fancy, and we moved to the living room to talk. About 30 minutes into normal conversation, Mark stood up and told us he had an announcement. He made a long speech about being happy to have his family around for his big moment. Then got on one knee and pulled out this cheap ring while asking Jen to marry him. Jen was confused and obviously uncomfortable and demanded that he put it away and stand up. My dad tried to make a grab for Mark, but I got to him first and punched him. I won't repeat most of it, mostly because I was too angry to even listen most of it, but he said something along the lines of wanting to show me that Jen wasn't really into me and just wanted to get back at him. Before it could get worse, my parents rushed me out and promised to talk to him. It's been a few days since it happened and I'm still pissed off. I don't know what to do at this point. I'm scared Jen might have second thoughts marrying me because of this. Any advice? Edit. Same post later that day. First, thanks for reading and responding. I've been reading the comments between last night and this morning, and valid points were made. There isn't an update since the only people I've spoken to since that dinner is Jen and my little sister. I want to clarify a few things that I saw in the comments. 1. Jen and I are newly engaged. It was one of those feelings where we both knew we were in it for the long run. As fast as it is, I'm sure about her. 2. When we met, I was the one who approached her, not the other way around. Whether she knew or had suspicions of us being related, I don't know. I asked after finding out they dated, and she says she had no idea. I didn't have a reason to doubt that, but I can admit this seemingly overreaction on Mark's part does raise red flags. 3. I had no idea she and Mark dated when I met her. Mark and I aren't close at all. We used to be, but as we grew up, we drifted and talked less and less. Before I moved back, we didn't really speak much aside from my special days, like his or my birthday. Jen knew of my family, but not much until I decided I was ready to introduce them to her. When she and Mark met, again, I didn't get a sense of any residual feelings on either part. She didn't treat him like a stranger, but she also wasn't overly affectionate with him either. 4. I was told this was a relationship that lasted a month. I didn't think I needed permission from Mark to ask her to marry me, but maybe that was wrong of me. I'm not sure. That being said, I plan to talk to Mark this weekend to lay everything out on the table and figure out what's up. I never asked for his side of their relationship, which is my fault for not doing my due diligence. If anything major or enlightening happens, I'll update. But for now, that's all I have. Relevant comments. Don't give in to the buddy's family comments. Thankfully, I haven't heard the he's family shit, much aside from my mom and a few aunts. They know me well enough to know our relationship isn't enough for me to put up with his disrespect, especially towards my fiancé. They'd be wasting their breath. On fiancé, yeah, I don't think I have to worry about her going back. Safe to say she can't stand him either, lol. So, because of the ironic similarity that this post has with Wednesday's post on the subject matter, I will be talking about this in depth on the nuance at the very end of the post, and just kind of where the separation begins to happen, as well as talking about some of the comments I saw. So if you're thinking in your head, oh, this is ironic, yeah, no, you're right, it is a bit ironic, and we'll be talking about that at the end of the video. But for now, back to it. Update post, September 10th, 2023, 2 days later. First, I wanted to thank everyone for reading. It's been a busy weekend, so I haven't had the chance to reply to many people, but I did edit in responses to the most common questions I saw in the comments of the original post. Again, thank you. I appreciate it all, even the criticisms. Now for the update. I called Mark and asked him to meet up with me at my place to talk. I told him I would prefer Jen to be around for the talk as well, but I was cool with it if he didn't want her there. He agreed to talk to both of us, and showed up at my place around noon today. It was pretty quiet for a few minutes before I started the conversation. I apologized for not warning him I would be proposing to Jen, and I apologized for hitting him. He said it was whatever, but he appreciated the apology. I told him what Jen had said about the relationship and breakup when I asked her about it, and I asked him to confirm if it was true. I pretty much said that his reaction throughout this whole thing has been extreme, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding their relationship or downplaying how serious they were. He confirmed that they only dated for a few weeks, and he broke up with her because he lost interest. Jen asked if he was acting like this because he still had feelings or regrets about ending things with her. He said he could admit he thought she was more attractive than when he last saw her, but there weren't any feelings or regrets. He said he just didn't like seeing a girl he dated, even if it was short-term, with his older brother, and as a man, I shouldn't have violated him by pursuing things with his ex. I reminded him that I had no idea they dated, so it wasn't like I consciously did this knowing their history together. He shrugged me off and said it didn't matter. I still should have broken it off. He was adamant that if the roles were reversed, he would have done the same thing, which I doubt. I asked him why he proposed to her if he didn't have any lingering feelings. Basically, to sum it up, he was talking about it to one of his buddies who was around when Mark and Jen dated, and the guy put the idea in his head that maybe Jen knew from the start that we were related, and was doing this to get back at him considering Jen had been hung up on him after they ended. He and his friend thought it would be a good idea to test it and see if they were right. So he came up with the idea to propose and see if she dumped me for him. Jen asked him to elaborate on why he thought she was hung up on him, and he told her that he heard she was asking about him following the breakup and still hanging out at the places they used to go to, so it was a valid assumption. Then, for her to pop up randomly with his brother, affirmed his suspicions. Jen told him she'd only asked about him once following the breakup, and she'd been hanging out at those places with friends before they started dating, and she wouldn't avoid them because of a breakup. She also told him she was offended at the idea she would go as low as to pursue me just to get him back. He shrugged and gave her a half-assed apology, but said she had to see it from his point of view. He asked her if she really didn't know, and she told him that she didn't see the resemblance in us until we were in the same room and we act nothing alike, so it never crossed her mind, and he said okay. That pretty much wrapped up the conversation. He did tell me before he left that I could take back his invite to the wedding because he can't bring himself to support our relationship knowing he used to date her. I told him he didn't have to worry about that as he was most likely going to be uninvited anyway. It's been a few hours since our talk, and I do feel better. My parents aren't too happy about him being uninvited, but they understand that it was a mutual decision and probably for the best. My sisters told me they knew he didn't have a good reason for being an asshole, and they don't blame me for not wanting him at the wedding. As of now, I'm going to limit contact with Mark, and I doubt he'll reach out to me anytime soon either. Once again, I want to thank everyone for reading and commenting, and if anything significant happens, I'll update again. Relevant comments. Why didn't she know of your family? We hadn't discussed my family much in the beginning of our relationship. I left home to get away from them, my parents specifically, and started reconciling at my sister's request when I decided to move back home. I was open about not being close with them when Jen asked, and she was okay with being left in the dark considering the circumstances. Update post 2 and 3, November 11th, 2023, 2 months later. Editor's note, OP posted both of these updates on the same post, but to clarify, Update 3 would have happened about 2 weeks after Update 2. He just combined both updates into one post. If I had to guess, it probably was because one of his updates got removed or stuck in limbo on a subreddit. I couldn't post this to the same forum, so I'm posting this directly to my profile in case anyone is interested in an update. It's been a while since I've posted, but a few things have happened since my last talk with Mark. So, I've been low contact with Mark since our last conversation. I haven't called him, and he hasn't called me, and our only interactions have been in family settings. As it stands, my mom is now upset that Mark is still uninvited from my wedding. It started with a comment made during my younger sister, Sophie's birthday, 22 female. Her boyfriend of, I think, 4 years, proposed to her at the end of the night, and we sat around talking about what she envisioned for her dream wedding. She talked a bit about wanting a destination wedding and her ideas from the cakes and dress, and then she said something along the lines of, "Teddy, I know Mark's banned from your wedding, but you won't care if he comes to mine, right?" I laughed it off and told her I can't get mad about her guest list even if I wanted to. My mom gave me this weird look and asked if Mark was still not invited to my wedding. I told her yes, and she got irritated. She told me she thought I was joking and said I was being unreasonable to go through with banning him from the wedding since he's family. She accused me of holding a grudge just to be petty. I reminded her that he and I agreed on him not coming. I then told her that this wasn't the time to talk about my wedding since the day was about Sophie, and if Mark or her want to talk about my wedding, they can call me another time. Sophie laid into my mom a bit about trying to make her special day about Mark, and my mom dropped the issue. For those of you who might be wondering, Mark wasn't at Sophie's party because he apparently had to work and couldn't make it. A few days later, my mom stopped by my house and said she wanted to discuss my wedding. She asked me why I was so adamant about Mark not coming to my wedding. She said that I shouldn't be insecure about Mark and Jen's previous relationship, and that uninviting him was a step too far. I told her that Mark and I mutually agreed on him not coming to the wedding, and he can come to me about it himself if he has a problem with it. We got into an argument, and she said that if I wasn't going to re-invite Mark, then she would not be coming either, because I'm ostracizing her son. I shrugged and told her if that's what she wants, then she can toss her invite in the trash because I won't beg her to be there. She asked me if I would really be okay with her not attending, and I told her it wouldn't be the first time she missed an event of mine because of Mark. She said I was being an asshole for throwing her past mistakes in her face, and she stormed out. I then started getting messages and phone calls from her and a few family members about the whole situation, saying I was in the wrong and urging me to invite Mark just to keep the peace. Jen's also been getting messages from my mom asking her to talk to me and get me to change my mind, but to my knowledge, she hasn't been responding. I just want to quickly throw this in here, I hate interrupting, but it's not really a past mistake if you're actively making that mistake in the present. So far, most of my mom's side of the family are standing in solidarity with her and not attending, while my dad and his side of the family, which is only my aunt and uncle and their 2 kids, agree with me and are still coming. My sisters are also still coming to the wedding, and of course, Jen's family too. Also, I talked to Mark about it and asked him if he had a problem with not having an invite. He said he uninvited himself in the first place, and he doesn't get why they're making a big deal because he still doesn't want to go. He told me to leave him out of the fighting because he's not involved, and he says he'd tell her the same. As of now, I'm back to being low contact with my mom, but my dad and I are still on decent terms. I'm still deciding on whether I'll re-invite my mom and her family, should they change their mind about the boycott, but the chances are low, and I told my dad this too, which he understands. For now, Jen and I started looking into downsizing the venue since the guest list is significantly smaller. Update 3, about 2 weeks later, give or take. My mom is uninvited from the wedding indefinitely. About 2 weeks after she decided to not come to the wedding, she came and stopped by and said she wanted to clear the air and talk about everything. We agreed and invited her in to join us for dinner. Jen made her a plate of food, and I asked her if she was still planning on not coming to the wedding. She said that while she wants to, she can't get over me not inviting Mark because of a simple mistake. I reminded her that his simple mistake was proposing to my fiancé with me sitting less than 3 feet away from him, and she said it was just a joke. Jen asked her why she wanted to talk if she was maintaining the same stance on Mark coming to the wedding. She said she wanted to talk to Jen, and she was hoping Jen would hear her out and talk me into inviting Mark again. She apparently assumed I was at work and she'd be able to catch her alone. Jen politely told her that she understood her thought process, but she wouldn't have had that conversation anyway without me present, since this is about my brother. My mom made a comment somewhere in the lines of Jen being spineless and unable to have a conversation without me thinking for her, which started a pretty heated back and forth between the 3 of us before Jen told her to get out. She got up and started walking towards the door, and my mom followed her, still screaming at her. By this point, she's yelling about her tearing our family apart. While Jen was unlocking the front door, my mom grabbed her hair and pulled her to the ground, still screaming. She hit her and tried to claw her face, and I dragged her off of her and threw her outside. She banged on the door for a few minutes while I made sure Jen was okay before she left and called the both of us repeatedly. When I was sure Jen was okay, I texted my mom and told her not to bother reaching out again because we'll never speak to her again. I called my dad and sisters and told them what happened too. My dad was surprised and tried to make excuses, saying she'd been stressed about this whole situation for a while. My sisters say they knew she'd snap eventually since she's always been a crazy bitch, and they said they'd come to make sure Jen is okay. I asked Jen if she wanted to press charges, but she declined and said she only wanted to cut contact with her for good. I told her that part was obvious, but she should still talk to the police since she was physically assaulted, but she doesn't want my mom to get arrested. My sisters and Jen's mom came by to comfort her, thankfully, so she's doing okay. My mom is blocked on everything until Jen says otherwise. I genuinely don't know what to do now. Jen doesn't want to go to the police because she'd feel guilty having her arrested over this, but my sisters and I want to convince her to. And I'd at least want documentation in case something happens in the future. Relevant comments. All of this could have been avoided if Mark had sat down with your mom and taken responsibility. Yeah, he absolutely could, but I don't think he knows what accountability means. I really do believe he thinks he has nothing to do with our mom's actions, and I don't think anything I say will be enough to convince him that everything she does is for him and her own selfish gain. OP comments on November 12th to someone saying they should really press charges. Jen is still against formal charges, but after reading some of your comments with me and a long talk with about how this could escalate, she agreed to have it documented with the police just in case. She wants to talk to my dad about possibly getting her back in therapy or some kind of treatment for her erratic behavior. And of course, we are moving forward with going no contact. Clarification post, November 13th, 2023. Title, some background on my relationship with my parents. Some people were asking questions about my mom and my decision not to be open with Jen about my relationship with my parents. I figure I could give some background on why we're so strained. Like some of you said, Mark was the golden child. Mark was my mom's baby boy, and she didn't do much to try and hide it. They didn't spend much time with my sisters and I like normal parents did with their kids unless they had to. But they'd spend time with Mark as often as possible, like taking him out shopping while we stayed with a sitter, or bringing him home his favorite food and toys from the store when they'd shop alone. He usually got better things compared to the rest of us, like new expensive clothes while ours were thrifted, or new toys just for him compared to old toys we had to share with each other. If my sisters and I got gifts, they were for us to share. But my mom made it pretty clear that Mark's things were only for him, and we shouldn't touch it. When Mark would screw up, I'd get punished for not being a good role model and showing him the proper way to behave. For example, Mark went through a phase of breaking his toys, and I got the beating because obviously he learned that behavior from me. When he was 8, Mark got in trouble at school for trying to push a kid down the stairs. I was grounded for 2 weeks and told to apologize to the kid for not teaching my brother right. When I turned 13, I pushed for my parents to start giving me an allowance. They agreed, as long as I did household chores like mowing the lawn, taking out the trash, raking leaves, etc. It was usually somewhere around $25 a week to help me start saving. Mark saw that I was getting money, and he begged my parents for an allowance too. Instead of making him work, $10 of my allowance money was given to him each week because we were doing such a good job with our chores that he never touched. Whenever I asked him to help, he'd tell me it's not his job to do chores, so why should he bother? It was around this time that I started really distancing myself from my brother. By the time I entered high school, we only talked to each other when we needed small favors or when we absolutely had to. I got my first job when I turned 17 because I wanted to finally get my own car and make money that they couldn't force me to give to Mark. My older sister Maggie helped me start my own bank account and showed me how to properly budget and save money. I got my first car at 18 after all of my hard work. When Mark got his license, my parents asked me to let him use my car to get around and for extra practice behind the wheel. Reluctantly, I agreed, and for a while the arrangement was fine. Mark used my car when I didn't need it and helped maintain it pretty well. When he expressed wanting my parents to buy him his own car, my mom came to me and told me to give him my car because he needed it more. When I refused, she threatened to kick me out. We got in a fight that night, which ended with her giving Mark my car and taking me to transfer ownership of it to him within the following few days. Since I didn't have anywhere else I could go at the time, I just sucked it up and signed it over. When I graduated high school, both of my parents skipped my graduation because Mark didn't want to sit in a long ceremony just to see me get a piece of paper. And my mom didn't want to leave him alone for the night. So I only had the support of my sisters and my aunt and uncle who wanted to take me out. They ended up having to bring me home at my parents' request because they made me dinner to make it up to me. It was a dinner I couldn't eat because my mom put shrimp and chicken on the same serving dish, and I'm allergic to shellfish. In my first year out of high school, I worked 2 jobs to buy myself another car. And at the start of the new school year, I moved away for college and cut contact with them. They, mostly my mom, tried to reach out for the first few months via social media and Sophie, but I never responded, and I told Sophie she would be cut off too if she kept trying. When she couldn't get to me through Sophie, she tried going through my older sister Charlotte, and a few times through Maggie, and Mark, until I threatened to file a restraining order for harassment. It was a bluff because I had no idea how to do it, but it managed to scare her off, and the most I got from her was happy holiday texts over the years. Around the time I moved back, Charlotte told me they had been seeing a family therapist, at Charlotte's request, and my parents wanted to apologize for their treatment of us. I was hesitant, but I agreed as long as they would be genuine. And the reconciliation process started when I moved back home. That doesn't even scratch the surface of everything they put me through, and it took a lot for me to even begin to let them back into my life. When I met Jen, I wasn't sure where my relationship with her was going or where my relationship with my parents was going. I didn't want to mention my family at all, mostly because I was ready to cut contact again if I needed to. Jen was understanding of it being a sore subject and didn't press for more. I hope this helps shed some light on some of the questions I'd been seeing pop up. Relevant comment. On why OP didn't have reconciliation depend on them reimbursing him for the car. Getting reimbursement for the car wasn't a hill I was willing to die on since the damage was already done. Even now, it's hard to believe Mark was the favorite. There wasn't anything really special about him. I don't mean that as an insult either, he was just a regular kid. My parents weren't having fertility issues, he wasn't a miracle, wasn't a meal ticket, they weren't having marital problems and using a baby as a band-aid. He was just born, and they decided to love him more than us. And believe me, they didn't think this was normal. They just have a soft spot for our parents because they're our parents, and they believe they have redeeming qualities. Opie responding to the question of, "You sure you're not adopted?" I'm biological. Unfortunately, they couldn't deny me even if they wanted to. I used to make excuses for them, but after a while, I had to admit that they're just two people who should never have had kids. Update post number 4, November 30th, 2023, 17 days later. I wanted to thank everyone who's taken the time to give me advice on what to do going forward, and all the kind messages and comments I've gotten over the past few days/weeks. Jen and I have read the comments together, and everything is appreciated. To answer the most common question about why I chose to reconnect after everything, the short answer is because I would do anything for my sisters. Charlotte wanted the entire family around and for the birth of her first child, and to help her while she adjusts. She didn't want part-time aunts and uncles who would only visit her kid during birthdays and holidays. She was never the type to ask for much of anything growing up, so when she asked if I'd be willing to try for her, I agreed, because it would make her happy. I also think part of me hoped that maybe they'd changed. I don't regret trying to reconcile either. My parents are still terrible, but I met the love of my life, so I call it a win. A few people wanted to know if there's an update, so here we go. Sorry if it's a mess or confusing. A lot has happened. We filed a report with the police and were told that even though Jen doesn't want to pursue anything, it's not up to us to decide whether it goes further, but they would keep our preference in mind. We provided some pretty decent evidence of the assault, including pictures of Jen's face and texts with my mom and dad talking about what happened. We were advised to report and record any other incidents with my mom going further, in case anything else happens. Considering where we live, I doubt it'll go anywhere, but at least we have it on record. I got about 100 angry text messages that tell me they at least spoke with her regarding the incident. My mom tried to corner me leaving my job and screamed at me about trying to ruin her life. She kept screaming that I was an awful son for trying to get her arrested over a small misunderstanding, and she didn't understand what she'd done to deserve being punished like this. I told her that if she didn't like being in legal trouble, then she shouldn't have hit Jen. She demanded I tell the police to forget the report, which I refused. I told her exactly what the officer said about it being out of my hands. She had a tantrum in the parking lot and hit me a few times, just on the chest and arm, before security intervened and dragged her off the property. I had to talk to my boss about the incident. Luckily, she was understanding of everything going on after I explained what was happening. When I got home, I told Jen what happened. She was upset and asked that we discuss the plan with my family moving forward. It was a long talk, but we took the advice of some Redditors and decided to go completely no contact with my family, aside from my sisters. We agreed that having them in my life is adding unnecessary stress for both of us, and we aren't even married yet. She told me she wanted to consider moving away and putting some distance between us and my family. She said that she tried to stay out of my family issues because it's not her place, but she refuses to put up with my mom and her behavior of my dad enabling her abuse. A lot more was said, too much to put in this post, but I agreed with her that they were more trouble than they're worth, and I also don't want to put up with this anymore. I also agreed to go to therapy, and she's helping me find a therapist. I decided to call my dad after our talk and let him know I would be going no contact. He didn't answer the first time I called, so I left a message asking to have a long talk. When he called back, he asked if it was okay for my mom to be a part of the conversation. I told him it was okay since she needed to hear what I had to say too. The conversation went about as well as you could expect. I told them both that Jen and I are cutting them out of our lives. My dad demanded to know why I would do something like that after going through all the trouble of repairing our relationship. I told him that this entire thing with Mark has shown me that nothing is actually repaired between us, and as far as they're concerned, the world revolves only around my mom and my little brother. I told them that their continued favoritism of Mark has brought our relationship to a point of no return, and that I wasn't interested in holding on to a failing relationship. I told them that I agreed to reconcile for Charlotte's sake, but I don't appreciate all of the disrespect towards me and Jen, and that I wouldn't put up with it anymore for both of our sakes. To my mom specifically, I told her that I was tired of her using me as a scapegoat for her bad parenting and Mark's attitude. I also told her that I would never forgive her for what she did to Jen and what she did to me and my sisters growing up. She started to say how I should move on like my sisters have, but I cut her off and told her that she should take their forgiveness and move on because she would never receive it from me, especially after everything she's done these last few weeks. She started crying and asking me how I could treat her like such a villain. I told her she could only be upset with herself because I've done nothing wrong. She cried harder and told me how much she regretted having me and how I've only tried to ruin her life. This started a heated argument between her and Jen once again, and Jen told her in much more colorful words that she was disgusting, and plenty of other nice names, for saying something like that to me. I don't know if she left the room or just decided to shut up, but my mom stopped talking when Jen was done speaking to her. My dad said he wasn't okay with being shut out of my life, and he asked me to try to understand my mom's point of view. He said that she was also struggling because her kids were at odds, and I was being unfair to punish her for her struggles with raising and caring for us. The last thing he said was that we were a family, and I shouldn't let past mistakes stop us from moving forward together. I told him that the only person she ever cared for was Mark and herself, and there was nothing he could say or do to make me change my mind. I told him that it was up to him whether to keep my number, but I would be blocking him and my mom everywhere, and I wouldn't be reaching out again. Then I hung up. Afterward, I sent a long email with the link to my post attached to my entire family, uninviting everyone except my aunt and uncle and my sisters to the wedding. I hadn't cried in a long time, but Jen held me while I cried after writing the email, and she assured me we would be okay. My sisters also reached out to me after reading the email. I apologized to Charlotte for not being able to continue reconciling like she wanted, but she told me it was okay, and it's not my fault I had to cut them off again. The responses from my family have been pretty mixed. Some are angry I aired out family issues on a public internet forum, while others are pissed at my parents because they never knew it was this bad. The last person I talked to about everything was Mark. He asked if I was cutting him off too, and I told him I wasn't. But I wouldn't be going out of my way to reach out to him either. He didn't argue and just wished me the best with the wedding. And we haven't spoken since. Right now, Jen and I are looking for a new place to stay. The plan is to move closer to Jen's brother. He lives about 3 hours from where we are now, and Jen and I like the city he's in. I spoke to my boss about transferring, and Jen is looking into the option of working 100% remotely or possibly finding a new job. And, once again, our venue's changed. Since the guest list is significantly smaller, my future brother-in-law is considering letting us use his lake house for our wedding. I don't plan to post any more about this unless the sky falls, at least not until the wedding, because I want to move on with life, but I'll try to answer any questions some of you might have. Thanks, and happy holidays. Edit, it took a few days to post this, and I had to keep removing details before I could actually post it. If anything's unclear, I'll answer as many questions as I can. Relevant comments. Your mom might try to figure out where you moved to. I'm already anticipating the aftermath of moving. She's going to follow us when we move because that's the kind of crazy she is. When she doesn't get her way, she becomes obsessive until she's forced to stop. I spoke with a lawyer friend of mine to see about a possible restraining order to stop her before she starts. Did Mom read the comments? According to Sophie, she's read a lot of them and doesn't think Reddit strangers have the right to tell her she's a bad person. LOL. I don't think there's any amending left in me. Wish them the best, just as far from me and my family as possible. Update, September 29th, 2024, 10 months later. Hey everyone, it's been a minute since I posted here. Things have been busy, but I saw a few requests for an update. It's small, but here it is. I have a wife and a newborn daughter now. Smiley face. We found out Jen was pregnant around the time of my last post, so that pretty much kicked us into overdrive as far as moving away and starting fresh in a new place. I was able to transfer to a different location, and Jen found a new job here that lets her work remotely. We got married 4 months ago at her brother's lake house. We didn't plan to have the ceremony so soon, but we both didn't want to wait for the baby to arrive to get married. Jen also found a dress that she fell in love with, and didn't want to get too big to wear it. It was a small ceremony with mostly her family present, but my sister's aunt and uncle did attend. I know some people probably wanted to hear about a huge blowout at my wedding, but it was easily one of the best days of my life. My daughter was born early last month. She's beautiful, happy, and healthy. Jen's also doing okay. The last stretch of the pregnancy was hard for her both emotionally and physically, but since giving birth, she's been doing a lot better. She's seeing a doctor regularly during this postpartum phase due to complications she had during the pregnancy, but so far, there aren't any major health concerns for her. Besides complaining about the doctor's visits, I don't think I've seen a frown on her face since we've brought our daughter home. As for my parents, I haven't heard from my dad, but my mom did reach out a few days after the wedding. Apparently, my uncle sent them some of the photos they took of the wedding. My mom made a fake Facebook page and started spamming Jen and I with angry messages about excluding her from both the wedding and from Jen's pregnancy. She went on a lengthy tirade about being entitled to being part of her grandchild's life and about how unfair it was that she wasn't allowed to be present in our lives. She asked to come visit us, demanded we visit her, and even asked to be in the delivery room, all of which was quickly shut down by me. I screenshot everything and emailed it to myself in case I'd ever need it for a protective order in the future, and I blocked her. I haven't heard from her since, but I know she's been harassing my sisters to get us all to talk to her. I don't know what, if anything, they're doing about it, but I did make it clear that we have nothing to talk about with her. For everyone wondering if Mark and I have been in contact, the answer is yes. He called after we came back from our honeymoon and congratulated us on the wedding and pregnancy. We did have a long talk about everything that happened. I won't go into detail, but we both got to say a lot, and he did offer both me and Jen what feels like a sincere apology for what he did. We've been texting a bit here and there since we talked. It's mostly just small talk and life updates, but he did invite me to have a drink with him the next time we're in town. I don't know if I'll accept it, but I told him I'd think about it. Thanks everyone for the support and well wishes you've all given us. Sorry if this update was all over the place. Edit, just to clear it up before anyone asks, Mark doesn't know where I live and likely won't know in the future. If he chooses to give updates about my life to my parents, that's his choice. I won't give many details that he can pass on that would help them pop up unannounced. Unfortunately, even if we were able to form some sort of relationship, I'll never be able to fully trust him. OP's comment. Commenter, congratulations to you and Jen on welcoming this new addition to your family. That's amazing news to hear. We knew that the fact that your mom got very unhinged after getting both news was a huge possibility, and she made it known to the world. Word of advice, document everything she does, says, sends. You never know if a cease and desist is in the cards for you. Let's hope not. But better to be safe than sorry. Congrats again, and soak up all those newly born snuggles. They're the best. Opie responds, Hey, thanks. Being a new dad has got me anxious, but I think I'm doing a pretty good job. Trust me, I've been embracing all the snuggles, spit, and tears she's been offering. I can't say I'm surprised to hear from her, but I've been keeping everything documented with the advice of my lawyer. I'm hoping we won't need the protective order, but anything can happen. So, when I was first looking at this post, I 100% did not expect this to actually be the mother who would turn out to be the Act 2 villain. Finding out Mark was the golden child definitely wasn't super surprising, but it's still just unfortunate reading everything that OP and his sisters went through growing up. I mean, being forced to give up your car or being kicked out, like, the mom can go fuck herself, and she doesn't deserve to have a relationship with her kids. Like, how can you do that to your child and then have the question of, how come they don't really want to be around me? Followed up by literally repeating the same mistakes you made in the past in modern day. Gotta love the line of, but these are all past mistakes you're focusing on. Yeah, past mistakes, as in 5 minutes ago. And they're a repeat of the shit you pulled while I was growing up. I think it's pretty fair to make comparisons to the past to the present if you're still pulling the same kind of bullshit that you never actually learned from. You don't care, unless it's Mark. Like, it really says something when all of your kids except for Mark, just without hesitation, are all on the page of, yeah, you should definitely press charges against our mother. If that's not a wake-up call, I don't know what could possibly be. And even though that Mark did choose not to get involved, even though the entire thing was happening because of his actions, I don't think Mark clarifying that, hey, I don't want to attend the wedding anyway, this is mutual, would fix anything because of just how much of an obsession and favoritism the mother has over Mark. I think she has it so twisted in her mind that she's in the boat of, no, Mark gets to choose that he doesn't want to attend your wedding. You don't get to choose that Mark doesn't attend your wedding. Also, gotta love the, how dare you ruin my life by holding me accountable for my actions? So what I assaulted your fiancé? So what I did all this shit when you were growing up? So what? Are you really going to hold this against me? What do you mean, yes? Also, shout out to the father for getting a new classification in the animal kingdom of invertebrate. Good job, dude. So, now that I also have the tangent related to the post out of the way, time for the elephant in the room. In regards to Wednesday's post. To me, there is a massive difference between this instance and the instance Wednesday, which of course you are always welcome to 100% disagree with me. This is my opinion, and as I've said, I am not a monolith. You guys are welcome to disagree with me and leave comments of your disagreements. But in my eyes, a month-long relationship that OP was entirely unaware of doesn't fully compare to a 20-year-long marriage that then ends and the husband then begins to bang the sister who he had known when she was in elementary school, and there are kids involved. Lots of kids, on both sides. It definitely complicates the emotions and creates an emotionally charged environment that I feel that OP, in that instance, at least in my opinion, was entitled to have. It was certainly interesting seeing the comments being so split on this. Granted, I was an only child, so a lot of my perspective was definitely from reading other commenters, hearing the opinions of people with siblings, saying that if they found out that their sibling had decided to get with their ex-spouse, they would definitely be extremely furious. So, to me, from reading those, yeah, I can understand why those emotions would be in play, even if things did end amicably. In this post, though, OP had no idea that that was a previous ex, and on top of that, they only dated for a month, compared to Wednesday's post of 20 plus years potentially. There's definitely a lot of nuance here, at least in my eyes, as to the two situations and why they're so drastically different while so strikingly similar. However, there were also some comments from Wednesday's post that definitely did make me take a second look at the post itself, in regards to how just OP described and worded a few things, i.e. potentially weaponizing the fact that kids can't keep a secret to spread the information, or even the fact that she kept bringing up the fact of, I choose to believe them, numerous times throughout the post, as if she was purposely trying to draw attention to it and maybe even cause people to read into things that she was just simply lifting her hands away from it and going, I'm choosing to believe this, but here's the info. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So I do appreciate those comments that did bring that to my attention. Personally, I still am in the boat, though, that there is definitely a reasonable amount of emotional charge that your ex-husband is now banging your younger sister. Like, that's 20 to 25 years of your life experience ending with your ex-significant other choosing your sister over you. And that's what everyone around OP, including the family, is going to see, and questions will definitely be risen about the fact of, was there anything going on while they were married? We have no idea. Now, I guess an interesting question from just a data standpoint of this, because my brain likes to churn over data, how many of you who didn't have a problem with Wednesday's story were either an only child, or you have a negative or borderline non-existing relationship with your siblings? That's actually a piece of data that I'm actually really curious in, because I feel like there's a weird empathetical disconnect between the two sides of the audience when it comes to that specifically. So Gremlin Brain is churning and excited to see the results there. Actually, fuck it, while we're at it, were there any of you who are on OP's side Wednesday who are firmly against the OP in this story for the same reasons? Or is there a firm difference? And to swing at it from an entirely different angle, are there any of you who do have extremely close connections with your siblings who were in firm disagreement with OP on Wednesday? I ask that you guys keep the discourse respectful because this is a really cool and interesting opportunity for people to learn from one another and to potentially see the world from a different point of view. So, this is exciting. It's Sonder. We all have individual experiences that forge and shape how we approach the world around us, and this is a really interesting example of just that. But hey, maybe this isn't as interesting to you guys as it is to me, and instead this is a point of angry contention, and I am 100% misreading the situation and only adding fuel to the fire. I don't know. Oh shit, I almost forgot to make an outro. Yeah. Don't forget, GamerSups, use code KEYZ at checkout. Every purchase made supports the channel directly. If you want to try some free samples before you commit to it, you can always do that. You can just go on the site, grab some free samples, use code KEYZ, and boom, look at that. You can test the flavors out before you go and purchase them. Make sure it's something that's actually up your alley. A lot of you have been doing that, which is awesome. But again, thank you to everyone who's been supporting the channel, whether it's through GamerSups, channel memberships, or those who are just watching the video in full, leaving likes, commenting, subscribing, turning notifications on. All of you are amazing, and I don't feel I actually express that as often as I really should be. So thank you. I'll catch you all tomorrow.